So let's begin. Hey everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us in the Test Automation webinar series. My name is Tejendra Gera and I'm your host for today. I work with customer engineering teams at BrowserStack where I help customers onboard our products and also assist with any integrations as a technical consultant. So that's a quick introduction about me. Let's do a quick recap of 2023. So we had 3 episodes of the test automation series in 2023. And I'm excited to bring the 4th episode today. We also host these videos on our BrowserStack's YouTube channel. So if you want to check out these videos, they are all informative and along the same lines. But before we begin, I'm honored to introduce our esteemed panelists. These guys bring a wealth of experience to our discussion. So let's take a moment to introduce our fine speakers. First, we have Lalit Madan. He's a director for global testing services and DevOps at Subway. Lalit has over 15 plus years of experience in managing automation tools, frameworks, and DevOps. He currently handles multiple segments like digital and enterprise as well. Next, we have RK, Ramkrishna Nutalapati, or RK as we all like to call him. RK has 20 plus years of experience in testing and test automation and is currently heading the Automation Center of Excellence at Keyloop. Currently, RK's focus is on developing and rolling out automation frameworks across the engineering teams. All right. So the theme for today's webinar is Mastering Test Automation on Real Devices. And I'd just like to talk a bit about the theme. So, we get a good understanding of what the discussion is going to look like. Now, I'm sure we all understand how challenging it is to ensure quality and reliability of software applications, and especially across diverse devices and platforms. Now, test automation has greatly helped in this space by enhancing product quality and accelerating release cycles. But as the spectrum of devices continues to expand, these traditional testing approaches are struggling to keep pace. So, keeping this problem and this challenge in mind, I would like to, talk about this webinar and, deep dive into test automation and the transformative role a real device infrastructure plays in reshaping the testing landscape. So here's a quick look at our agenda. We'll start off with a bit of a background on testing in general, and we'll look at what it takes to build a long-term test automation strategy. We'll follow that up with device fragmentation and how it's impacting the testing landscape. We'll also look at testing on real devices versus emulators or simulators, emulators and simulators. And we'll finally have a look at the next phase of test automation, and we'll wrap it up with Q&A. A couple of housekeeping items. Today's session will run for 60 minutes. So all participants will be muted so that we allow our speakers to present without any interruptions. We have also reserved 15 minutes of Q&A at the end, so please feel free to use the Zoom Q&A window to send in your questions. The session is being recorded, and the recording will be made available to all attendees. And we also have polls during the session, just like what you saw at the beginning. Please feel free to engage whenever you see them. All right. So without further ado, let me start by introducing. Without further ado, let's start the discussion. With our 2 years of experience and 2 decades of experience in the testing space, I'd like to invite RK to kick things off. So RK, why don't you tell us a little about how software testing has evolved over the years?
Yeah, thanks, Tej. The software testing is one area which has evolved tremendously in the last few decades. Maybe if I go back with the timeline, early 2000s was the time when we have seen a lot of manual testing happening and not much of automation happening at the time. But as the years progressed, there are good number of automation tools that are made available, and there are few that have come up as an open source, like Selenium that came up, which actually changed the spectrum of the automation for the testers to go with. Then in early 2010s was a time when actually the boom of the software testing has happened. And that's when there are multiple tools that are available. But then the most of the bigger challenge that the testers have been facing all the time was how to run their automation tests on multiple browsers, because the web applications started growing up, and the number of browsers that are available for the testers to run the tests have grown, and different versions of these browsers are available on the customers' systems. So the challenge of testing of these applications on multiple browsers and browser versions has been a challenge for the testers at time. Uh, and as the years progressed, the cloud adoption has increased, and the areas where the testers have to focus on testing the cloud applications has also increased. And mid 2010s is the time when the mobile application started coming up. Now the complexity of the testing has further increased with multiple devices coming in with the different operating system versions and different form factors. And this, if you see, the testers' complexity of testing has increased as years passed by. That made the testers look for some solutions to help them out. And at the same time, the device farms started coming in mid 2010s, and that actually started helping the testers to use these device farms to help test on real devices, and also help them to focus on what actually they need to test on. And at the same time, as you see, in the initial phases, the testers were mostly into functional testing aspect of it. But as years pass by now, we expect the testers to be SDETs, especially focusing on DevOps, be it performance testing, security, API testing, whatnot. Everything is expected to be the skill of a tester that we are planning to hire. So a tremendous evolution happened, and very importantly, this is not going to stop here. This is going to be the case with any tester in this space. So yeah, the testers learned how to survive in this situations, and we all know how we can survive in the future years coming in.
Yeah, that was a great background you shared with us, RK. I believe the key takeaway from RK's response is that testing is and will be a continuous improvement process. So now let's shift our focus on the automation strategy. Lalit, we see more and more teams are shifting towards test automation. So what do you think should be the key aspects for building the right test automation strategy?
Uh, Thank you, Tej, and thank you, RK, for sharing the insight on how testing is evolving. When it comes to test automation strategy, I always take that in two pillars. One is the horizontal pillar. That includes your cost, your ROI, and your business value that the automation is going to bring in. After that, we have vertical pillars that starts with analyze and design. It depends on so many factors that you have to analyze. Start with what kind of application under test is. Let it be a desktop application, web application, mobile application, API automation that you have to do. Second, you have to also consider the skill set that you have in your organization. What kind of resources you have, what are the capabilities are they Java developers, are they .NET developers, are they API developers, and all that. Moving on, you need to look at the technology of the development. Is it applications written in Swift, C, .NET, Java, Angular, or whatever the application tools are that are being used for the development? You have to look for the cost aspect of those things in terms of whether you should go for the open source or you should go for the licensed softwares. What is the team size could be so that you can actually analyze the cost of your licenses and all those things. Once you have all those things, then you have to look into what kind of testing you are getting into. Is it the data that you are focusing on? Is it the UI that you are focusing on? Is it the API that you have to do for the backend? Is it databases that you have to check? Are you testing the ETL tools and things like that? Depending upon that, you need to finalize a tool. You need to finalize a framework, let it be BDD, object-oriented, TDD, or whatever the framework you're going to come up with. That is what going to be the foundation of your test automation, because that's where you're going to start building. Once you have analyzed everything and you have designed your framework, you will get to the next phase, which is going to be the build and develop. Now, there you're going to start reviewing your test plan, your test cases, your test design, and finally your test scripts and test data, of course. Now, here you're going to start automating your test scripts, right? But I always say when you go for the test automation strategy, you have to keep in mind that you have to give focus on the quality and not the quantity. You do not want to automate the 5,000, 10,000, 2,000 test cases. You should not be after numbers. You should be after the quality. And that's where I said the horizontal pillar is very important. You need to understand what you should be automating that will be bringing the best business value out of your automation. Once you have finalized that, you have automated your scripts, you're going to move to the next phase, which is execution. Now, execution is important because execution can be done in multiple ways. You want to execute on your local machines. You want to execute on the grid, which is being maintained by you and your team. Then you have to look for, if those two things doesn't work for you, then you have to look for the cloud platform where you maybe have to execute, BrowserStack being the one. So, and again, wherever you decide to execute your test case comes with a cost. Again, going back to the horizontal pillar that you have in the top, right? You have to analyze whether you have to go sequential or you have to go parallel, how you want to execute your test cases. Again, if you want to go for a SaaS solution, you have to make sure that you are getting the good ROI and good business value because you are putting a lot of cost in there, right? You want to do CI/CD, you want to integrate your automation test suite with the development pipelines or deployment pipelines, you can do that. Again, there's a cost associated to it. So you have to make sure that you get the business value out of it. On top of that, you can also integrate your automation suite with your test management tools like ADO or Jira so that you can start your execution right from there, and then you can also get the results back there. So the execution, you have to create this phase in a way that works best for your organization, what tool you are using from the overall organization standpoint for the test management and test execution standpoint. The final is, which most of the teams basically undermine, is reporting and dashboard, right? You want to make sure that you represent your statistics, you represent your automation execution status, you present your test data and test results in a way that the other person can execute. And it varies from person to person. If you are showing it to your test manager, your pass percentage, what failed, how many passed, makes sense. When you're presenting these reports to the product, you have to focus on what area of the products it is bringing value to, where you find most defects and things like that. So you have to create your reporting in a way that is well suited for the executives, for the leadership, for the product team, for the testing team, for the development team, and all that. And that's where comes your reporting and dashboard. Again, cost and ROI and business value stays on top of all those vertical pillars because that's define how much value you are bringing and your automation testing is bringing in. Now, I cannot tell you what tool you should be using, what software you should be using, or what programming language you should be using because it depends upon your organization structure, and you go for that. But you need to make sure that you get best return of investment for every cost that you're putting into your automation strategy, and you get the best return after that, and that's what the ROI is. So pretty much you have to look at holistical view of your cost, your return on investment, and your business value. And then you have to go phases by phases from design and analysis, build and develop, execute, and finally reporting and dashboard.
Great. That was very insightful, Lalit. The horizontal and vertical pillars gives us a solid ground to formulate the test automation strategy. And we are moving on to RK. Now, RK, this is something that I wanted to bring up. How do we figure out what to test on? So we have a multitude of devices available with different operating systems, browser versions, form factors, and that is excluding the new devices that are launched frequently. And then there's this question of testing on real devices versus emulators and simulators. So what do you think about all this device fragmentation and its impact on testing? And just to touch on one final question, like, have you also had an experience with simulators and emulators as well?
Yes, yeah, that's a good one, Tej. The as I mentioned earlier, this has been a big problem for the testers to deal with the multiple devices and the form factors, operating systems, and whatnot. There are different aspects that needs to be covered for them to carry out these tests. And importantly, if these tests have to be carried out on real devices, and if you have to maintain these devices in your lab, just imagine the costs that involves. Going back to the horizontal pillar that Lalit has mentioned, which is very important one, which is the cost and the ROI. And here the cost factor goes significantly up. And importantly, we should also consider the new devices that come up very frequently, and how you have to keep them up to date in your labs. And very importantly, if your teams are fragmented and located in multiple geolocations, then just imagine the cost that gets involved, because we are talking about the physical devices here. So during this time, the testers and we also have worked on simulators and emulators, but then there are few things that we cannot guarantee running the test on emulators. I'll give you one real-time example in one of my previous organizations where we have tested and released an app on Android, testing it on emulators. Then we got a defect reported by the customer in their UAT environment, and which we could not reproduce it. That actually talks about how effective the emulators are, and you cannot go ahead by just focusing on testing on emulators and simulators. So the challenge here is how to overcome this now. So with the solution that BrowserStack provides, like App Automate, is the one that can really help in testing the apps on the real devices, and that also has a great capability of running the tests on multiple devices at the same time with multiple parallels enabled. So yes, the testing on emulators has been a challenge, and it always is an incomplete test. And with the different solutions that are coming in, similar to App Automate that BrowserStack provides, has actually helped multiple teams, including ours now, to release our products and apps with more confidence.
That's actually delightful to know, RK. And I'm glad that we were able to help customers like Keyloop with App Automate. And yeah, and over to you, Lalit. Building on what RK has mentioned, how has your experience been with simulators, emulators, and real devices? Are there any specific mobile testing use cases that your team frequently comes across?
Yeah, thank you, Tej, for asking this. And I think RK pointed out briefly about the difference between the simulators, emulators, and the real devices, and how sometimes we can reproduce one issue on a real device, but we do not see the same thing happening on the emulators or simulators, right? So to answer your question, first we have to understand the difference where, or the areas where we see those kind of things coming in, right? Most of the devices, if you look in the ecosystem we live in, are basically touch response devices, right? And that's where I think the simulators, emulators, and the real devices makes a very big difference, right? If you have to test the intensity of the touch, if you have to look for the small back buttons, close boxes, and things like that, those are the areas where the sensitivity of the touch, the screen rendering, and the location of those objects makes a big difference, because if the screen is not rendered correctly and you are not able to use the touch correctly, I think these are the things which will create the end user experience go bad. So this is one area in terms of touch sensitivity and the screen rendering is one area of difference which you find between simulators, emulators, and the real devices. Second, the screen size also play a big difference between these, because one is just emulators, which is emulating a device. However, the other device basically takes care of how all those things are loading and basically rendering on the screen, and also rendering on different sizes as well. So that's the second difference that comes in, right? When we're talking about the emulators versus simulator versus the real devices, performance and latency also comes in the picture, because you do not know that the lag or the latency you are seeing in terms of request and response when you're touching on the screen is actually coming from because you're working on a simulator emulator, or it is coming because the performance of your application itself. And I think that's where the real-time devices also comes in picture. I still remember the time when I used to have a lab full of devices, which we used to maintain on our own, and we have to upgrade the devices every year. We have to upgrade the operating system every year, and it was a connectivity issue was always there, because we have to connect to a VM RDP into it, or if we are using iOS, we have to connect to a Mac Mini or SSH into it, and finally we were able to trigger our device to actually execute on those devices and actually test it, right? The cloud solution definitely made the life easier in terms of that, but I think that's where the real difference comes in. As of talking about the real devices feature that are also handy, security is one area where everything is growing as well, and it becomes a area where everybody's attention is needed. And that's why most of the applications are going into the two-factor authentication, right? Now, there's an OTP, there's a validation keys and all those things, and you do not have that facility if you are using the emulators and simulators, because there's no feature where you can have a SIM attached to a device where you can actually get the core or the OTPs and you can actually test your two-factor authentication. That's one. Globalization and internalization also is growing, right? Every app, every product wants to go global. When we do that, and when we are going on the cloud at the same time, I think the data center location also comes into picture, because you may have scattered data center, one in Europe, one in North America, one in South America, one in India, and places like that. And now when you have to test your apps, the geolocation comes also handy with this cloud solution in the real devices, right? You can actually mimic that your app is also, or your device is also located in UK or Germany or a Europe region, when your data center is also in that region, and basically you are trying to perform some activities, and you are seeing that the performance and latency is not there, because you are kind of simulating the similar experience that an end user will do, right? So that's another example of the geolocation, right? The companies are also coming with the device farms, where you can have a devices actually sitting in the location of your interest, and you're actually connecting that device in that location, connecting to a data center, or using an app that connect to a data center within that region, so that you can do a real-time performance analysis around that. So I think these are the features that we are using or plan to use, basically, that is very useful for your growth in a globalization and internationalization. So I think device farms, SIMs, and I think the geolocation is the biggest pro of when it comes to the real devices, that you will definitely will not be able to get from the simulators and emulators, apart from screen latency, screen rendering, and touch sensitivity.
Great. Again, thanks, Lalit. I believe we shared quite a lot of real life use cases, and these are all very insightful. Thanks for sharing your experience. Now let us shift gears a little. So what's next in the test automation space? So one of the things we have been hearing about recently is low code, no code automation. RK, so what do you think about low code, no code? Is it really the next phase of automation?
Yeah, before I talk about low code, no code, let's first look at how the tester skills are divided into in the current scenario. I'll take two predominant ones. There are so many, but I'll just take two important ones here. One is conventional functional testers who are expert in their domain and have very less inclination towards technology. And two, the automation engineers who are not so inclined towards domain, but have good skills in automating any test case that is given to them. Now, in most of the organizations, how this automation happens is the functional tester designs all the required test cases and writes the test plans, carries out the tests that they think are more valid for that application, and then passes on the important test cases, what they think, to which needs to be automated for regression testing to the automation engineers. And as part of this, what they do is they share the test cases and test plans, and they also do a knowledge dump, either in the form of a one session or by sharing them with the recorded script of what actually the test case has to cover. Now, in this process, when the automation engineer converts these test cases into an automation script, there is a loss of the knowledge what the domain expert in functional tester goes missing, because when the functional tester carries out the test, the value of the testing that they carry out not just will be confined to the test case or the test plan what they have designed, but it will be much beyond what actually it is. Whereas the automation script will cover only those which are documented there and which are already recorded in a video or the knowledge sharing that has been done. In this case, if you see, there's some loss of information in just one single test case. Now, if you just multiply this with the number of test scripts that are developed, just imagine the loss of the value that we are supposed to get otherwise. So this is where the big chasm gets created, and over a period of time, the impact that the test scripts can provide would actually starts diminishing, and that actually makes the overall automation test suite being percent, whether it is really effective or not. Okay. Now, in this situation, just imagine if the functional testers themselves would be able to create these automation scripts. In how would they do that? As they are not technically inclined, is there any way that we can provide a framework for them so that they can just assemble certain things and recreate the areas what they actually carry out as part of their test is what actually we look at. So that's where this low code, no code concept comes in. So for the functional testers, they don't need to write any piece of code there, any line of code there, but then they would just assemble the artifacts that were given to them so that they create a complete test script. And at Kilo, we follow this low code, no code approach. And we have seen a tremendous improvement in the value of the test cases that are converted into test scripts by the functional testers vis-a-vis which were done by the automation engineers earlier. So now we are more confident of the test scripts that we are developing, and the confidence that we have while releasing it is also much higher than what it was earlier.
Great. That's an interesting take, RK. And I'm intrigued to know what Lalit thinks, because in one of our earlier conversations, you mentioned life coming across in a full circle with low code, no code. So Lalit, why don't you share more with our audience and your take on low code, no code automation?
Yeah, thank you, Tej. And I think RK put forward a great point in terms of how low code and kind of bridges the gap between the manual testers and the automation engineer in a way, and how the information sometimes get lost between that. But I think coming back to the point that you mentioned about life comes in full circle, I totally believe on that. I still remember in 2007, 2006, when I was doing my first project in my college, and I was creating a VB, and I was using VB to create a website. I did not code anything. I just used the drop down by creating the edit boxes button and kind of provide the action that they have to do, which was again a kind of low code, no code. But I used that in 2006 and something like that. When HP QTP, now UFT, came in the market, they also came in with the record and replay option to start with, where you can simply record whatever is happening on your screen, or what you are doing, kind of records it, converts that into a script, and then you can just execute the scripts on your platform, and you can get the results out, which is again kind of low code, no code. But I think at that time, the basic feature that we were missing was in terms of maintaining those scripts, because as soon as anything changes, even a small change on the screen or on the object, you have to do the entire thing again. You have to record it, or you have to change it manually, things like that. But I think the new codes are coming with more self-healing capabilities as such, and providing more information there. I still believe that there is no such thing as truly no code. The only thing is that the balance has been shifted, with majority of the things has been coded in the background to provide you a good features on the front end that actually helps bridge the gap of the manual testers actually doing those systematic arrangements and creating the scripts out of that. So I think that that's what the definition of low code, no code to me is. Again, there's always scripting involved, but we'll just shift the balance to the back end by providing good UI to the front end, right? That's one. Second, again, going back to the evolving off from manual testers into the automation engineer and into the SDAT roles, and how we are evolving in terms of that. Low code, no code, kind of capability depends upon the skill set that you have in your team. So if you have a good balance of manual testers versus automation engineers and kind of thing, I think that's a good approach that you can take, because then everybody is basically contributing into the automation area. If you already have a team full of engineers who are basically as that in nature, providing them the low-code, no-code tool, basically adding more cost to it, because they're already well-versed with the scripting and the technology and things like that. So I'm very keen about the horizontal pillar, and I use that everywhere, because I think many of you must have experienced that you have presented a good solution to the leadership and executives, and it still didn't go far, is because of the horizontal pillar, because you are still not able to prove that how the cost that you're putting in that particular area gonna bring you the return on investment and the business value. And I think that's why I focus a lot on the horizontal pillar, that before you make a decision on going on the low code, no code, and if that tool is good for you, how you can use that tool for your organization or for your team, you have to also analyze what kind of skill set you have, what are you automating, what is the long-term strategy that your organization have, and then finally adopt the mechanism that works best for you and your organization. But I think that's pretty much that's pretty much the take that I have on low code, no code.
Thank you, Lalit, for insights. Your response ties in well with our overall theme today. And again, that was a great session, Lalit and RK. But I see we have a lot of questions coming in from our audience. And before we move to Q&A, I do want to extend my heartfelt thanks to both our speakers, Lalit and RK, for insightful session. But we now move to the last segment of our webinar, which would be the Q&A. We will take as many questions as possible, and we'll start off right away. So yeah, just give me a second while I share my screen. So RK, I think I would like you to take this one. You mentioned shifting left in test automation. Could you expand on that?
Okay. The shift left is the area, is one concept where I can bring in my testing assets to use as early as possible in the development cycle. So especially in the case of mobile testing, how we can do that at the earlier stages is the reuse, how the developers can reuse the automation assets developed by the testers at some point, and can help in running these tests which are impacted before the code is submitted for merge. So that's where the concept of using these real devices on the cloud can help, so that they can quickly run these tests very at a very early stages, and to identify whether the code has introduced any regression issues which could have been identified only during the regression cycles otherwise. So with the technologies, different technologies coming to help the testers, the same can also be passed on to the development friends, so that they can start making use of these assets, what we have prepared, what we have created, and at the same time can also be run on the multiple devices to figure out if there are any regression issues what they have introduced. At the same time, we can also start using these assets to run at a regular intervals, be it with the integrated with CI/CD pipelines, or run it on a nightly basis to figure out what are the issues that have been introduced because of the changes that are made. So if you see the value that we are getting out of this automation and out of these assets would not just be only at the testing phases, but we are reaping this value much earlier, bringing in the greatest return on investment, which I go back to what Lalit has mentioned as one of the horizontal pillars. So the value that we get and the returns that we get by shifting left and making use of the available assets and the tools that we have can really help the quality of the code to be delivered or delivered be of much higher range.
Thank you, RK. That was very informative. So moving on, I think I'll like Lalit to take this one. How do you assess the ROI of test automation? So and basically optimize the strategy accordingly as well.
Thank you, Tej. I think I talked about ROI a lot. I think that's why you are bringing this question to me about explain the ROI now that you have talked about ROI a lot. Okay, so before I explain what ROI is, I will tell you all what ROI is not. If somebody tells you in the automation area that the ROI is total time taken to manually execute a test plan minus total time taken to execute the same test plan through automation, multiply by the hourly rate, and you get that number that is your ROI, is your saving, is a wrong calculation altogether. In this particular calculation, you haven't considered any cost, any effort that you have put in maintaining or creating, and all the SaaS solution license costs that you have put in. Secondly, these ROI will get multiplied with the run cycles, which is again a wrong thing because I don't know if you'll be using the same manual test plan every time or not. So if somebody tells you this is the formula of the ROI, it can give you a good number to present on a paper, but that's definitely not the ROI is. And I will give you a little example. I was given an invoice of 500,000 and finally shown the ROI on paper as 150,000. That, oh, we have saved 150,000 this year because we have automated this. So my question was, am I expecting an invoice of $350,000 from next year? And the answer was no. And if the answer is no to that, then I don't know where the $150,000 is going. So to better explain ROI, and it can be done in multiple ways, right? First is your time to market, right? How much time you are taking, and everybody's moving to agile these days. So I think time to market plays a big role. If your test cycle is 8 days or 10 days or 12 days, and if you can actually cut that test cycle into half because you have done more automation and you can execute in parallel and you can bring in efficiency there, then your time to market goes down, which means with the same capacity of the resources that you had before, now you can do that work fast and you can reduce time and you are actually going faster to the market. So your overall release cycle and the product release cycle will kind of shorter. And now you can hit the market with the new products and features faster. And that's an ROI because you're going to market faster. You are taking more products out. Second is, which I normally call a negative ROI, but still a ROI, is with the increasing cost, with the increasing scope, and with the increase in terms of your applications, your test plans, your test cases, are you still able to maintain operational cost? Which means if I'm spending $100 a month to do something, and 6 months later, the work has been double, the application has gone double, and my test plan and test cases has gone double, but I'm still able to manage to do the same work with the same operational resources. I think that's kind of ROI, which means I did not inflated my team size and the cost as my other scope is increasing and the other work is increasing. And this is one way of putting a negative ROI on the piece of paper, which is an actual ROI, because you can show the cost was $100 at that time and this was the scope. The cost is $100 right now and this is the scope. So you can actually kind of quantify that, right? Third thing again is, if you pick up a big chunk of work for a repeated item and you start with a team of 8 people or 10 people or 20 people, let's say, and over a span of 1 year, when you start automating and kind of bringing efficiency in, if you manage to reduce the team size from 20 to 16 to 15 or 14, that's an actual ROI that you are bringing, because now you are not paying for those resources and your team size is kind of shrinking and your invoice is kind of shrinking. So these are the ROI or return on investment that I defines and I describes to, because they are not bringing me the paper value or the paper saving. These are bringing the actual saving on the table, and we can utilize these for in other areas.
Wow. Again, Lalit, that was really insightful. So many key takeaways from that. And so, yeah, that was pretty much a great eye opener. Moving on to the next question. So, I'll let RK take this one. So, the question is, since we have so many device fragmentation and again covering many different devices of use, sometimes the challenges are managing those scripts and filter out the valid failures against false failures. So I think the core question is, around the challenges of managing those scripts itself. So RK, would you like to take this one?
Yeah. See, generally, we do not need to maintain multiple scripts for different devices. So we need to manage running these scripts with a single set of scripts, and just the effort that you may have to put in is to validate the failures as occur in each of these devices. It depends on the number of devices that you are carrying out your test. But the script maintenance would not be complex if you design your framework appropriately and ensure that you have single scripts running on multiple devices.
Got it. Great. Thanks, RK. Moving on, Lalit, I have one on AI. So this one's for you. How does AI going to affect automation testing and the entire QA domain, and how to deal with the same? So this is one question, Lalit.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to add some positivity to this question, right? I think it's going to bring more opportunities to start with in our automation and overall testing space, right? I remember when automation was not a thing and we used to do manual testing, we always get to see, oh, now the automation is coming in the market. Everybody's looking for automation. Everybody is doing and going for automation. The testing scope will go down. There would be no jobs in this area. The testing work stream will kind of fade away with more automation coming in. Nobody has seen that happening here. What we saw is more opportunities, evolving roles, evolving technologies, and people learning those technologies. I think with AI, the similar thing is going to happen and at a very large scale, right? AI is coming in, right? And this is what is going to bring, I'm going to go back to the previous question, talked about the maintenance. AI is going to bring the self-healing capabilities, self-execution capabilities, and kind of self-fixing capabilities through the machine learning and through data processing, where your actual work in terms of maintenance will go down, and you're going to focus on more innovation and more new work in relation to maintaining your old scripts overall. So I think AI is going to open door for more evolution in the testing space. We would be able to do more The only advice I have for people here is keep learning and keep your skill set up to date so that you are at par with those technologies coming in. Because trust me, you are going to be exposed to more opportunities coming in. Because in my last QS summit, I mentioned something and I'm going to repeat it this time. Whenever a automated tool or automation tool is being developed, you need somebody to test that automation tool as well. When a new programming language comes into the market, you need somebody to test that programming language as well. So anything that being developed to automate something, we need somebody to actually test that particular thing as well. So we are not getting out of those quality thing, and all we're gonna do is grow, and there are gonna be more areas to grow in.
All right. Great, great take on that. I think again, Lalit, I believe this is a follow-up to that question, but I think it somehow answers that as well. So one of the question is, there are AI tools that help speed up test automation, like TestGrid. So what's your take on that? Like, did you get a
There
chance?
are AI tools that kind of speed up.
Yeah, speed up test automation.
Mhm.
So any chance you had taken a dig at that?
No, as I said, of course, your automation is gonna, and I'm gonna give you a real example on how the speed of automation is gonna go in, right?
Mhm.
You're automating an app, you have an object on your screen, and the developers are making changes, and your object kind of get changed, and the properties that you are using for your object is basically now no longer relevant, and your scripts are failing. Now you have to go back and kind of maintain that script, kind of capture the object, kind of capture the project properties of the object, fix it, and then try executing it, right? Just one example, right? Which is slowing you down because there is a maintenance effort to it, right? With the self-healing and the self-maintainability tools which are coming in these low code, no code tools, or even I think we have an extension for Selenium as well, uh, th that can bring that capability in, is now we are also going deep to get the metadata of those objects, which means we already have captured the metadata for the object properties that you have captured, which means if an object name changes or any attribute changes, the tool actually goes underneath and find out, oh, I think the name of the object has been changed or the caption has been changed, but seems like the same object because the location of the object is same, the coordinates of the object is same, the action of the object is same, and 5, 6 properties are also same, but the caption seems to be different or a name seems to be different. So I think somebody has changed or made change to that property. So I'm going to still click on that, go on and see if my flow works, right? Which means as compared to previous where you have to maintain a lot, now you are maintaining less and your automation is speeding up, right? Another example of AI getting it as in VMSS in terms of like scale set. One of the area where we spend a lot of cost in maintaining our execution agents, right? Now, you have 5 applications running in parallel. There is no scale set capability that you have, and that there are tools available out there which can do that for you. And three of three of the applications are waiting for execution of other 2 applications to complete because before they have the execution agents available for those 3 applications, and then the applications start executing. With those AI tools and kind of scale set your execution agents, what you can do is you will have execution agents on demand. Now we have 5 applications running in parallel. We need more execution agents, and you will have spin up the more virtual machine skill set, and you have more virtual machines running in. So now you have more execution agents. As soon as the application one goes down and the execution agent goes free, we're just gonna spin it down. And now you always have agents available, but yet you do not have those agents available permanently. So you are optimizing your cost and savings. At the same time, your application is not sitting idle and waiting for execution agents to be available to execute in parallel. That is going to increase the speed, because because the limitation of your execution agents, your automation was taking 5 days for 5 applications. Now, because you have that capability, your 5 applications can execute in parallel within a day or two. So I think these are the areas where you will see even more the speed of the automation will keep on getting up and will speed up. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, that was great. Again, I think quite a lot of questions on AI. I think that sums up most of the questions that have been asked in the chat. But I would like to just change the topic from AI, and move on this one. So, like RK, I believe you mentioned a lot about emulators and simulator, and so have Lalit. So the question is, like, given this view that's currently floating about emulators and simulators, so what is the best approach, or what's the right forward in terms of mobile testing? Like, what's the best way to go forward with mobile testing, given the view that we now share with emulators and simulators?
Do you want me to take that, page?
Yeah, okay, yes.
Yeah. See, the solution is simple. I think we discussed this during our discussion as well, is go and don't rely on the results that you get on emulators. With multiple devices being available on cloud, real devices being available on cloud, make use of that and get better results. So don't limit yourself by testing it on emulators or simulators, because they are not they cannot give 100% guarantee, and the tester should not compromise anything less than 100% for their before they release. So it's always a quite clear answer for this, which is go with the go and test it with real devices, and you don't need to put in too much of cost in procuring all these real devices. There are lots of solutions similar to as BrowserStack has already provides the real devices on cloud. So just go ahead and make use of those services, and I'm sure you'll be happy with that.
Oh, great. Again, thanks for answering that, RK. And just a follow up on that, I see another question for low code. Would you recommend using low code, no code software for documenting system functionality through test? Does that make sense? Rich, it's from Richard. So I think just like to rephrase that question a bit. Can low code, no code be used for system functionality? Is what I take from the question.
If I understand that question, likely can low code, no code be used for testing system functionality using by automation? Then answer is yes, we can do that. There are certain frameworks that are available, and they need to choose the right framework for their needs, and can carry out their tests using low code, no code for their functional test automation as well.
Right, great. Right, let's see what else we have. Yeah, and just I do want to jump a bit on the upcoming events. So that's scheduled in case if you would like to register yourself. And moving back to the Q&A. So yeah, please feel free to register for the upcoming events that are scheduled. And let me see if we have any other question. All right, Lalit, I have one on so like on PAN verification with OTP related use cases. So the question goes like this. So for monolith system, which approach is good to automate? So the few challenges they are facing right now is single branch mechanism in monolith or frequent changes in app. So how we can automate PAN verification, which with OTP not in which is out of control, which is not in our control. So I think there are a couple of questions out there, but let's start with the first one. Like for monolith system, which approach is good for automation? I think let's start with that.
So I think I need to understand the application better to provide solution in terms of what approach is good. Also, if there's any SaaS solution available for the monolith application to start with, I think I will start looking into that as well. But if I go with the frequent changes in the app that you are facing, I think It could be simply solved with open communication with the development teams, as if what you need and what you don't need in terms of the objects, so that you don't get into the maintenance mode. Or maybe you can also kind of get into a conversation with the development team or the app teams in terms of what field you want or what property you want. Let it be automation ID or something that should not be frequently changes with the changing in the app. Changing in the app is fine. Changing in the properties of the objects which are there on the app is something different. So if the flow is changing, that's fine, that you have to maintain. But if the objects are frequently changing, that I think that needs open conversation with the development team. Or you may get into the self-healing and self-maintainability tools, which most of the tools have right now in terms of low-code, no-code as well, which can kind of self-sustain the changes which are coming in the app. Automating the PAN verification, and if I'm not wrong, it's like the SSN in India or something like that, correct?
Yeah.
Your permanent account number.
Mhm.
So in that case, if we are waiting for that, first of all, if you are testing across the production system of the PAN, which is out there, which generates the real OTP and sends it to you, then you have to have a system that supports your data, that can convert multiple data sets for you, right? And in which case, you should always be using the devices which have the SIM capability available, so you can have that number sent out to the PAN, and then you obtain that OTP on that number, and then you get generated. If there is a cap on that particular production system of the PAN, that how many OTPs you can receive and how many things you can generate, then you have to get into a place where you have a random data generator or kind of use for particular domain or particular SIM. Like every time you connect, you get a different number, maybe from the SIM, and then you pass that out and you get an OTP out, and you kind of use that function. Again, there could be multiple approaches, but when you are dependent on a third-party production system, you have to limit your testing into what you can do, because now the OTP that you are testing with this app is a functionality for the PAN verification, which is a kind of dependency on them and kind of responsibility of them as well, that it is working. So even if you test it like quite a few times and you are always getting the OTP and it's working on your app, I think you have already tested that functionality, because security for that PAN verification OTP is on the PAN side, not on your side from the app standpoint. So you have to also understand and tweak your testing as well.
Just to add to that, Lalit, we can also use service virtualization to replace the PAN system there, and you can get the prefixed OTP, and then you can clearly key in that prefixed OTP always that you get into the system, and then continue your testing.
Yeah, I think that's a very good solution as well. You don't even have to hit the PAN validation side. You can just have a mock response coming out, and whenever your app calls that, it automatically does a mock response, and you continue your flow, and you don't have to worry about that OTP thing.
Yeah. Again, great. Thanks, Lalit. RK, I think we are on time. But any questions that we missed, we are going to answer them right after this event. But again, thank you all for the participation. Thank you, speakers Lalit and RK. It was an honor. It was a great pleasure presenting this webinar today. So see you all soon.
Thank you, Tej. Thank you, RK. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
You guys.